no surprises, Red Flag Hall. And that's where the Communist Party held all its meetings. What was wonderful for me is that there was never any preaching at all. We were never told that this is an ism that we are following or this is what you're meant to believe. Everything was by example, and there were certain givens. Given was a celebration of India's pluralism. Given was equality for women. Given was that you struggled hard to make the conditions of the working class better. This was a complete given. None of them came consciously. It was almost by a process of osmosis. I can only tell you that I went to a convent school, and like every girl who's 4 years old in a convent school, I wanted a white doll with blue eyes and golden hair. And my father gave me a black doll at age 7 and told me black is beautiful too. So I thought I had a very queer kind of father and quickly hid the doll away somewhere, and then of course it all fell into place.
So maybe you could also, since you're talking about growing up, talk a little bit about your mothers who are not quite as well known as your fathers maybe, but are highly accomplished women in their own right and need, I think in many ways deserve to be celebrated for who they were, not simply as women who stood by and supported their husbands, but were fellow travelers and comrades in every sense of the word. So what was family life like? What was the relationship between your father and your mother? Perhaps you could talk a little bit about those things.
My mother was a tigress. She believed that she was born to protect all of us. She felt that, I mean, even before she ever met my father, when she was a young woman in England, she joined the Freedom for India League. She was Krishna Menon's secretary, and she found it to be a very bad-tempered boss. So she became a member of the Communist Party when she was 16 years old, before she ever came to what was then undivided India. And on the whole, she was a person who kind of kept my father on the straight and narrow in many ways politically. She was also a person who saw him through thick and thin. And he often said to me much later that, you know, I did all the things that I did because I knew she would always be there and she would look after you. She would work and make sure that there was food in your stomachs and you had a roof over your head. So in that sense, I think that he leaned on her a great deal. And I think his letters from jail are a testament to what then he gave to her, which was tremendous moral support in a very difficult time. And if you like, can I read a little bit about something that he wrote something to her from jail, which I think is, sometimes it stood me in great stead. He wrote to her in a letter in 1952, I think that pain and unhappiness are distinct and different things. And it is possible to go on suffering pain without being really unhappy. Pain is something external, something that comes from without. A ephemeral accident like a physical ailment, like our present separation, like the death of a brother. Unhappiness, on the other hand, although produced by pain, is something within yourself, which grows, develops, and envelops you if you allow it to do so and do not watch out. Pain no one can avoid, but unhappiness you can overcome if you consider something worthwhile enough to live for. Perhaps I'm becoming pedantic again, so I shall leave it. The weather here is exactly as you left it. Only the nights are becoming a little colder. The day is slightly warmer. I'm in good spirits and better health, and thinking of you and my funny faces with all the love in my heart. Faiz.
And her letters to Faiz are published?
These letters are published. He translated them into Urdu himself. The letters in English, unfortunately, we thought they were destroyed by termite when they were in was cleaning out her cupboards and I found these crumpled pieces of paper eaten by termite. And I opened them, I recognized my father's writing. And I realized these were the letters, the original letters in English, a few of them. So I took them to a conservationist who was marvelous in Karachi, and we salvaged about 23 letters, which are now published in the original in English. And really, when one reads the Urdu and one reads the English, you find how close in spirit his translations are. So we have the English, and of course we have his translations, which are published.
And Shabana, your mother, of course, has published her autobiography, Yaad Ki Reh Guzar.
Well, my mother came from a sort of upper middle class background from Hyderabad, and she was a vain girl given to spending lots of money on her clothes and looking after herself and basically like that. And then she fell in love with this young dynamic poet at a conference in Hyderabad in 1947, where he read his poem Aurat, which means woman, which had become quite the flavor of the season. And she happily decided that this poem was for her. This poem was written more than 65 years ago, और अगर आप मुझे इजाज़त देते तो मैं उसका एक बंद सकती हूँ. जिंदगी जहद में है, सब्र के काबू में नहीं, उड़ने खुलने में है, निखत ख़मे गेसू में नहीं, जन्नत एक और है जो मर्द के पहलू में नहीं, उसकी आज़ाद रविश पर भी मचलना है तुझे, उठ मेरी जान मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे. कद्र अब तक तेरी तारीख ने जानी ही नहीं, कद्र अब तक तेरी तारीख ने जानी ही नहीं, तुझ में शोले भी हैं बस अशफिशानी ही नहीं, तू हकीकत भी है दिलचस्प कहानी ही नहीं, तेरी हस्ती भी है एक चीज़ जवानी ही नहीं, अपनी तारीख का उन्वान बदलना है तुझे, उठ मेरी जान मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे. आप सोचिए कि आज से 70 साल पहले कैफी साहब ने ये नज़्म लिखी थी, ये शौकत कैफी ने सुनी और उन्होंने फैसला कर लिया कि ये मेरे लिए लिखी है, और उनके साथ चल पड़ने पे वो तैयार हो गई. That's how they met. But the fact is that because he was a member of the Communist Party, he was earning only 40 rupees a month. All the other money was going away to the party. She actually had to go out and work, otherwise there was no way that they could make a living. And then she, in order to support her husband, went out, became an announcer with All India Radio, then joined Prithvi Theatre, and then joined IPTA, and became an actress. And we were able, the family was able to eke out a living because my mother was the primary bread earner. But she was madly in love with him.
And being from Hyderabad, I can tell you that she was not the only one who thought that the poem was written for her.
That was a special ability of Kaifi, to look into the audience's eyes at every single woman and make her believe she was the one. That was his success.
I think that's the poet's phenomenon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So the one thing that I find very remarkable about these two poets, one of the things that I find very remarkable about them is that they made very difficult choices. I mean, of course, they were fierce freedom fighters, and that went without saying, but in the post-colonial state, they could have very easily accepted state patronage and become very comfortable in their lives, yet they chose politics of opposition and paid a fairly significant price for it. Faiz went to prison several times. I was wondering what that felt like, because not only did it exact a price from themselves, but the family itself went along with him in that pursuit. So I'm wondering what that was like in your households, that decision.
I think, very early, very soon after he was arrested, my mother sort of told myself and my little sister, I was 8, she was 4. She said that, your father has not done anything wrong. He's not a criminal. He's not stolen anything. He's gone to prison because he believes in right. So without knowing what it was that was right, we sort of accepted the fact that he was that kind of a person. I think it's hard for families who have suffered this kind of it's a kind of a trauma, but there's also a certain belief that enters you that there are certain things above your own petty daily wants that deserve certain sacrifices. It seems cliched, but you know, and it takes its toll. But there's also something deeply, deeply fulfilling because you learn what human relationships are about. You learn what truth is about. You also, in a strange sort of way, learn what beauty is about. And I think that that's something that happens to families, and it stays with you. It stays with you for the rest of your life. And also there's a love born out of this, which is why, you know, people like us can become bridges across a sea of hate. I think so. I think that's the legacy that we leave us. That kind of suffering gives you.
No, but our background was very different from that of Salima's. So in that sense, I never felt a sense of deprivation. I didn't feel that we should have more money than this. Money was never a problem at all. It never came into discussion at all. Like I was telling you earlier this morning, that my mother was a very, very hospitable person. And Kaifi was prone to tell her at like 4 o'clock in the evening, scratching his head, "Okay, Shaukat, I've invited some people for dinner." And she would say, "How many people?" And then he would say, "Well, about 8 or 10. And she would say, "But why didn't you tell me during the day?" "I was feeling scared." So she said, "You should feel scared now. How am I going to cook for 10 people at 4 o'clock in the evening?" And then at 9 o'clock would be this gorgeous spread. And of course, 8 people didn't turn up, 20 people did. And yet she would make it possible somehow. I don't know how she did it. But I also noticed, I also remember that she had only one gold kada, one gold bangle. That's all the jewelry she possessed. And every time my brother Baba and I saw that the gold kada was missing, we knew we were going to have some house guests, because she would pawn it at the shop, and with that money then make this fabulous meal available for all her house guests. So it was that kind of thing she did without any sense of sacrifice or the family making a sacrifice. I think what happened, you know, by a process of osmosis was really that money was not such an important thing. I think we learned, because look, we had a very tiny little cottage in Janki Kutir in Bombay, and which didn't even have an attached bathroom. And we had people like Faiz Ahmad Faiz, Josh Malihabadi, Firah Gorakhpuri, Begum Akhtar as house guests living with us. And the fact is, there were industrialists galore who wanted them to come and stay with them or put them up in 5-star hotels, but they were happy to come and stay in our modest little cottage, and I would move into my brother's room and they would stay in my room. So obviously what we were learning, that there were certain things that were of value which money couldn't buy. I don't think at that point we were aware of it, but in retrospect, I think this is what we were doing. So we didn't feel any sense of sacrifice, deprivation, nothing.
And since we're talking about legacy, I know for a fact that you have inherited that legacy. Hello, yeah. Since we're talking about legacies, I'm saying I can attest for the fact that you carry on that legacy of hospitality at Janki Kutir, which continues to be a hub of great social activity and gathering place for friends. Could you also talk about how the fact that your parents were artists of a particular kind might have impacted you yourselves in your career choices? Like, both of you are artists as well, although not of the same kind that your fathers were. But do you feel that you have inherited a particular kind of an artistic legacy that informs your own career choices and work?
By example, mostly, because we grew up in an atmosphere where it was believed that art should be used as an instrument for social change. and whether it was the progressive writers movement or whether it was IPTA or Prithvi Theatre, they were committed to that kind of art. So that's what we grew up believing. But the thing is that, you know, so much of politics was discussed in the house that there was a time when I was about 19 or 20 when I prided myself on the fact that I don't even read the newspapers. I'm not interested in politics, I'm merely an artist. And it's to my father's credit that he never pushed me. Surely he must have been very disappointed that there was this 19-year-old daughter of Kaifi Azmi priding herself on the fact that she doesn't read the newspapers. But I think he was so secure that the earth was so fertile that the seed was bound to take root. वो मिट्टी इतनी गीली थी कि कोई ना कोई दिन अंकुर फूटेगा ही, और चुनांचे हुआ भी ऐसा. The kind of films that I did, they were films about people who were fighting social injustice. So I couldn't just up and leave and say, I will treat my work like a 9-to-5 job, and after 6 o'clock not concern myself with the lives of the people that I'm portraying. And so willy-nilly, I got involved in it, and Abba very happily saw that acha, the prodigal had returned.
I think the same with us, that my sister and myself were always felt कि भी आप जो मर्जी करो. कभी ये नहीं था, except, I mean, I regularly failed mathematics in school, and my mother, who was deeply upset by the fact that it showed, you know, a total lack of application, because I didn't want to go to school either. So she said, जाओ अपने बाप से पूछो. So I used to go up to him and with a sort of put my head down, and I would say, अब्बू मैं arithmetic में fail हो. So he said, कोई बात नहीं, मैं भी कभी पास नहीं. So that was खुली छुट्टी, आप जो मर्जी करो. And subsequently also, of course, when people used to say, अच्छा फैज़ की बेटी हो तो तुम शेर नहीं कहती. So this used to really, really get me. And I used to go up to him and complain that, you know, what is this? So he said, हाँ कह दिया करो कि एक ख़ानदान में एक शायर बहुत काफ़ी. But I think they both the parents nurtured this idea that being creative, which, you know, both my sister and myself are, but also doing something which was beyond oneself. And again, it was never said that we had any kind of a duty. It was something that we grew up with. I remember I led a procession when I was maybe 4.5 years old. And that happened because after we had moved to Pakistan, we were coming down from Kashmir in 47, and there had been terrible massacres in Murree. And my mother got all the women together and said, you know, the women must demonstrate for the stopping of this sort of bloodletting. So she got a procession together, and I was put on a little donkey right in the front, and I held a white flag. So I've kind of never stopped since then. You know, it's been like that, whether it's been the Women's Action Forum or the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, or any particular, any particular cause that one feels is you know, worthy of one's attention. So yes, it was never said; it was understood.
Both Kaifi and Faiz were great poets, but there were a lot more besides. I mean, they wrote, Kaifi had a column, Faiz edited a newspaper and a magazine. They wrote screenplays. Faiz wrote Jago Hua Savera. Kaifi Saab wrote an entire screenplay for Heer Ranjha in verse. And I think everybody knows that Kaifi was a great lyricist, although people still are a little surprised when they find out that some of the greatest songs of Hindi cinema were written by him. ये नयन डरे डरे बहारो मेरा जीवन भी संवारो आज हम अपनी जुदाई का. Can you speak a little bit about his career as a lyricist? Do you have a favorite song? More than
you
one?
know, it's very interesting that Kaifi's songs have always, he hasn't written all that much. His work as a lyricist is much smaller than compared to Majru or compared to Sahir or people like that, but they're all extremely good songs. Now the thing is that, of course, he started writing in films. Buzdil was the first film he wrote because there was no money in the house and they needed money, and so Shahid Latif told him to write. He was producing the film, and so he said, you write the songs, and that's how he came in. His songs became popular, but the films flopped. So there was a perception in the film industry that Kaifi is unlucky. He stopped getting work altogether. One day, Chetan Anand came to his house and said, Kaifi sahab, I'm making a film after a very long time, and I'd like you to write the songs. So Kaifi said, Chetan sahab, people say about me that I'm a good lyricist, but my stars are bad. So why do you want to take the risk? So he said, but people say that about me, that I'm a good director, but my stars are bad. Maybe if the two of us come together, something positive will come out of it. And the film was released, and Haqiqat became a very, very big success. And after that, of course, came his very, very successful period. I think that largely people know Kaifi as a revolutionary poet, as a socialist poet, but he was also an extremely romantic poet. And his romantic side you see in his film lyrics in the most simple language that you can possibly imagine. I've had the good fortune of working in a couple of films in which he's written the songs, and अर्थ का एक गाना है, कोई ये कैसे बताए कि वो तन्हा क्यों है, वो जो अपना था वही और किसी का क्यों है, यही दुनिया है तो फिर ऐसी ये दुनिया क्यों है, यही होता है तो आखिर यही होता क्यों है. अब आप देखिए कि कितनी सादगी, इसमें कितनी सादगी है, मगर कितनी गहराई है. तो there are many songs of his that I feel कुछ दिल ने कहा कुछ भी नहीं, कुछ दिल ने सुना कुछ भी नहीं, ऐसी भी बातें होती हैं. So it's very difficult for me to pull out a particular song and say that I like, but I think he was a very fine lyricist too.
Faiz was quite a romantic himself. I mean, if I... Faiz
Javed says you can say that again. You can say that about Kaifi also.
जी. I mean, फैज़ साहब की वो नज़्म है जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि इस कदर प्यार से है जाने जहाँ रखा है, दिल के रुखसार पे इस वक्त तेरी याद ने हाथ, यूं गुमा होता है गर है कि अभी सुबह फिराक, ढल गया हिजर का दिन आ भी गई वस्ल की रात.
I think, of course, I mean, traditionally also, the poet is a great romantic figure. And there used to be jokes in our house because, you know, there would be, somebody would arrive, a lady would arrive who professed to be a poet and would hang about, and, you know, she wanted to sit around, and then it would be lunchtime, and then it would be like, you know, and my mother would be sort of looking at her watch, and the lady wouldn't go, and then, and, you know, Abba would make a signal saying, okay, so I'm going off for my siesta. So my mother used to be sitting entertaining, you know, whoever it was. And I still remember once, I have to repeat the story, some people may have heard it, but it's one of my favorites. We were living in London, Shoaib and myself, he was at LSC and I was doing something. And so my father used to come and stay with us. And so once he called us, well, at that time I think he sent a letter saying he was coming, but there was a Labour member of Parliament, a lady, a great firebrand. So he said, oh, she's going to pick me up from the airport and I'll go and have dinner with her and then I'll come after dinner. Fine, okay. So we find that little while after the plane has landed or whatever, Papa comes along with the lady. So I just made dal, roti, whatever I could quickly and fed them both. So after he went off, I said, Abba, क्या हुआ? आप तो उनके साथ दावत पे जा रहे थे. So he said, भाई क्या करें? वहाँ से एयरपोर्ट के रास्ते में खातून ने इजहार इश्क कर दिया. तो फिर मुझे और तो कुछ समझ में नहीं आया. मैंने कहा चलो तुम्हें अपने बच्चों से मिलवाती हूँ. अगर देखें, अगर वो बहुत भोले आदमी होते तो हम मान लेते, लेकिन इतने वो भोले भी नहीं थे.
लेकिन मैं भी आपको एक बहुत मज़ेदार किस्सा सुनाना चाहती हूँ. मैं जो हूँ कुछ करीब 9 साल की थी और हम लोग किसी इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट के घर किसी पार्टी पे गए थे और अब्बा मम्मी दोनों साथ लेकर गए बिकॉज कोई मेड तो थी नहीं, तो दे हैड टू टेक मी अलोंग. And there was this, the hostess with a drink in one hand and a glass in the other, with a cigarette in one hand and a glass in the other, saying, Kaifi sahab, my usual farmaish. You know the one about the do nigahon ka something something? You know, folks, Kaifi sahab has written this poem specially for me. And Kaifi sahab, without batting an eyelid, starts reciting do nigahon ka. And all of 9, I got up and said, this is pure lies. It was written for my mother. It is not written for for this lady. So everybody was very shocked. And my mother said, hush, child, hush. But was she glad that I stood up for her? After that, I never heard Kaifi dedicating a poem to any random woman.
So maybe I can ask a question that shifts the mood a little bit, which is that both of them were eternal optimists, and I think that we might be able to return to that. But I also get a sense from their poetry that there were moments when they felt a deep sense of despair as well. Kaifi Saab, when he wrote Dusra Banwas, when he wrote things like धर्म क्या उनका था क्या ज़ात थी ये जानता कौन घर न जलता तो उन्हें रात में पहचानता कौन घर जलाने को मेरा रात जो घर में and Faiz himself wrote many verses of despair. निसार मैं तेरी गलियों के है वतन के जहाँ चली है रस्म के कोई न सर उठा के चले. So I'm wondering what that felt like to them when they were in feeling the sense of despair. How did they cope with it? Did you get a sense of what that was like for them?
You know, I think that in, many times in his life, there were these sad moments, but possibly being away from home and homeland caused him the deepest anguish. I mean, because he never said anything like, "Eh dil mere musafir." This sort of feeling of being in a situation where he could not return, or it was difficult to return, caused him great anguish. But on the other hand, at the same time, because he was living in Beirut, he also came to identify deeply with the Palestinian movement. And we used to say to him that your last great love was the Palestinian revolution and the cause of Palestine. And some of his finest work at that time was for that. So I think that always with him there was this feeling of not allowing himself to feel despair. And if I can again, just a little thing he writes about what an artist, what a writer is about. He said, we are the offspring in the direct line of descent of the magician and sorcerers and music makers of old. In times gone by, these ancient ancestors of ours could make the rain come down with their incantation and their songs. They could make the deserts bloom. And they not only implicitly believed that they had these powers, their community believed it too. This is because they found for the hopes and fears of their people, for their dreams and longings, words and music that the people could not find for themselves. And by blending their collective will to a desired end, they would sometimes make the dreams come true. So that is who we are, the inheritors of this magic and the power of this magic in big ways or small, depending on the intensity of the love our hearts possess, on the anguish we share with an anguished world, on the measure of our strength to defy what is evil and to uphold what is good. And thus, as a writer or artist, even though I run no state and command no power, I am entitled to feel that I am my brother's keeper and my brother is the whole of mankind, and this is the relevance to me of peace, of freedom, of detente, and the elimination of the nuclear menace. So I think that even in the deepest moments of sadness, despair always had this possibility of showing the way to hope. And I've never ever heard him being despondent. He would always say, "Ki, nahi, theek hai, badal jayega." You know, this one day, so his always famous story of, and I was actually there. And in Pindi once, there was a big, you know, in the 70s, a huge crowd, and there was a lot of, you know, slogan. And this boy came running up to him and said, "Faiz Sahab, inqilab kab aayega? When will the revolution come?" So my father looked at him and said, "Tumhe jaldi kya hai?" So it was always be that it was on its way, you know, hang on.
You know, I would mirror that exactly. That's what he did. Every time I think he felt despair, he hid it and he found a way to come out of it and see the light. I think that was what they were all built into bringing hope in people's hearts. The thing that I feel sad that I couldn't have a real conversation with my father about was the breakup of the Communist Party, because he was such almost like a believer in the Communist Party. And when Glasnost happened and Gorbachev happened, he gave the story about, no, what was being practiced was not communism. And I would have really liked to engage with him in a proper intellectual discussion. But I realized that even for somebody who was so close to him as me, it was too painful for him. So it was like questioning somebody's religion almost, you know, and so I couldn't ever have that conversation with him. But otherwise, every single personal unhappiness, despair, etc., was again sought to be, to show the light at the end of the tunnel, because everybody's brother was his brother.
So maybe we should open it up for questions,
Sure.
but let me ask one quick one before we do that. Since this is a conference of writers, maybe they might be curious about hearing what their writing habits were. Did they need isolation?
Yeah, I'd really like to know what were Faiz Chacha's writing habits.
Well, you know, Abba would always say कि भी मैं तो मजदूर हूँ. So whatever time he went to bed at night, you know, yaar dost aaye hain, whatever is happening, he would be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he would bathe, he would shave, he'd read the newspaper, and then he would sit down. Not necessarily to write poetry, not at all, but he would be working. And you know, when there were long spells, because he was always, you know, it was either journalism, it was cultural work, he was at the Pakistan National Council of the Arts, there was always work to be done. And I remember once he said to Faraz, because Faraz was saying there's no inspiration, you know, times are so bad. So he said, never mind, you know, sit down to your desk and like a workman sharpens their tools, you should just mashq karo, so that you're always in process. And I found that he always complained that he never got the time to write poetry. Whenever a line was coming, you know, there was something else that had to be done. But he was a worker at it, and he was tremendously conscientious about, well, being, as he said, "Main kalam ka mazdoor," and used to work in that manner. Very, very disciplined. Both my parents were highly disciplined, and that is sometimes something they don't associate with poets at all.
Did he write on a particular kind of paper with a particular kind of pen?
I found that he was very, very self-critical. So I found beginnings of poems on things like newsprint, which he discarded. And I remember when Usqa Wafa came out, you know, the collected works, he came home with the first copy and he gave it to my mother. And he said, "Not much for a lifetime." And so she said, "No, you haven't written a lot, but you've written well." You know, she was sort of assuring him. And she said to me later, he did so many other things that there was not enough time for poetry. So Shoaib, my husband, joked with him. He मुझे दीवाने गाले भी तो चुप इसलिए फैज़ा कोई बात नहीं.
You know, there's this great mystique about writers, that writers have to be put away in a corner and the house suddenly must become completely silent because the writer is doing his work. There was no such thing in our house. He had a study, he had his desk with its face literally to the door so that life in the form of his children came in, and I used to walk in and out, ask him the most inane questions. He would put his pen down, he would answer the questions and then continue. The only trouble that he had was when he had to write a film song. So there was a deadline to meet. Like at 9 o'clock in the morning, he has to give the song. The evening before that, he would start cleaning his drawers. Then a letter he had not replied to 3 months ago would say, it's very important for me to reply to this letter right this moment. Then clean his pens, do all kinds of things except put pen to paper. But later I realized that the creative process was constantly happening. And then when he would put pen to paper, it was almost like a letter. You know, there were never any scratches or anything. But he did use a particular lined pad to write on. He wrote with Mont Blanc pen, which was his only cherished possession. He had 18 of them, and he used to send them to a hospital, to a fountain hospital in New York, to get them cleaned every 3 years or so. And he would write in blue-black ink. That was the only thing, but otherwise, writing was no big deal at all. It used to just happen.
If only it was true for the rest of us. So maybe we can open it up for questions from the floor. If there are mics, you could help us.
Hi ma'am, I'm Purushottam from Hyderabad. Just a question to you ma'am, Shabana Azmi ma'am. Whose poetry would you like the most, Javed Saab's or Kaifi Saab's?
Faiz Ahmad Faiz's.
It's a very diplomatic answer, thank you.
I'm asking her to sing something.
Yes, please. I was hoping that we could.
जादू का गाना गा दूं? अब गाते हैं आप पहले सवाल ले लेते हैं अभी कहते हैं yes, there was a young girl there.
May I ask?
Yeah.
Please.
Hi. My question is to both of you. I want to know from you, who do you think has influenced you the most? After whom is your personality more? Your mother or your father? And this question is to both of you.
I think I am, won't believe it, but terribly quiet, which is similar to my father. I have a lot of patience, like him. My mother was a very mercurial person, and so it was, you know, fireworks, but I'm not like that at all. So I suppose my father's stamp on my personality is terribly strong. And it used to frustrate my mother no end, because when she used to see me lose money, lose things, you know, forget things which I should have remembered, she used to get really infuriated. And what used to really annoy her was that I loved to travel like him. She said, "Tumhare paon mein bhi chakkar hai, baap ki tarah." So, and also, of course, I used to lose things so regularly that she used to, and when I used to say that, you know, I came back having lost this, having lost that. So she said, it's okay, I've had a lifetime of looking after your father, so, you know. So I guess, yeah, I carry a lot of his issues around with me.
I think a combination of both Abba and Mummy, both of them.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing such warm, fond memories. I wonder if you'd be willing, though, to share what you might see as flaws in your fathers. Faults or flaws that they might have had that you would be willing to share with us.
I suppose it's not really a flaw, but he had this tremendous ability to be completely at ease in the company of people who were really villainous and, were really people who one sometimes felt that how does he manage to be so kind and so generous? So I was, in fact, telling this morning that once I didn't want to protest, but I said, Abba, how can you be in the company of so-and-so? So he said, भाई फरिश्ते तो उतरेंगे नहीं, तो इंसानों के साथ ही गुजारा करना. So I think that, sometimes I used to feel that, do they actually know the worth of this? But then I also believe, like him, that everybody is redeemable. So, but he occasionally carried it too far. At least that's what my mother always thought. Very difficult to tell, really, because it was...
They were pretty perfect, both of them. Yeah. Somebody pass the mic now.
Hello, can I take the question?
Yeah, please.
If in 47 he said, "Ye wo subah to nahi," what would Faiz say today?
वो इंतजार था जिसका ये वो सहर तो नहीं.
Chale Chalo is, after all, the end of that poem. I think, आइए हाथ उठाए हम भी, हम के जिन्हें रस्म दुआ याद नहीं, हम के जिन्हें सोज़े मोहब्बत के से कोई बुत, कोई खुदा याद. I think the soze mohabbat and the paucity of that is something to hang on to. I think neither poet was among those on the side of those जो नफरतें बेचते हैं. हम उनके कबीले के नहीं हैं. We belong elsewhere, and I think we have to be absolutely firm in the fact that we don't sell hatred. That is not who we are.
And Kaifi Saab, of course, has that famous poem about 26 diye that he lights and which get extinguished because of the winds that are blowing. And he says, हाँ मगर एक दिया नाम है जिसका उम्मीद झिलमिलाता ही चला जाता है.
I think with them, with both Faiz and Kaifi, they were aware that change and transformation is a very slow process. They didn't belong to the Mackenzie era, where if you put in this much, then within 5 years, these are the results that we need to see. They were very, very keenly aware that when you're talking about behavioral change, when you're talking about transforming mindsets of people, it was a very, very long struggle. And I'd like to share with you an incident where I once asked Abba, I said, when you're working for change and it doesn't happen at the speed, at the pace that you want it to, don't you feel frustrated? And he said very calmly, he said, Beti, when you're working for change, you should build into that expectation the possibility that change might not occur within your lifetime. But you must have the belief that if you carry on working towards it with all sincerity, then one day that change will come, even if it does so after you are gone. So there's no place for any frustration. That to me really has become my mantra.
Abba used to say, nothing is wasted. And that was at the core of it. Nothing is wasted. Every tiny thing is worth doing. So wo jo cheez hai, wo
No, what Shabana was saying is echoed by Faiz as well when he says, "Bala se humne na dekha to aur dekhenge." Right? Others.
फैज़ अहमद फैज़ और कैफ़ी आज़मी ये लेफ़्ट मूवमेंट के बहुत बड़े स्पोक्समैन थे थ्रू देयर पोइट्री, और दोनों रोमांटिक पोइट और पोइट्री फॉर द डाउन ट्रोडन। जैसे फैज़ अहमद फैज़, रात में यूं खोई हुई तेरी याद आए, जैसे वीराने में चुपके से बाहर आ जाए, हौले हौले से चले सहराओं में बादे नसी, जैसे बेवजह बेकरार को करार आ जाए। एक तरफ तो ये पोइट्री और दूसरी तरफ डुबो ली हैं उंगलियां मैंने खूने जिगर में, क्या वो आग थी। इसी तरह कैफी आज़मी, जो मशाल ये दोनों शायर ले के चले, उस मशाल का आपके ऊपर आगे बढ़ाने का क्या ज़रिया आपने अपनाया?
Other questions, please? There's some women here who had been raising their hands. Can you please pass the mic on to them?
बहुत सादा सी चीज़ है कि जब दुख की नदियाँ में हमने जीवन की नाव डाली थी, था कितना कसबल बाहों, लहू में कितनी लाली थी, लगता था यूं लगता था दो हाथ लगे और नाव पूरम पार हुई। ऐसा ना हुआ, हर धारे में कुछ अनदेखी मझधारें थीं, कुछ मांझी थे अनजान बहुत, कुछ बेपरखी पतवारें थीं। अब जो ही चाहो छान करो, अब जितने चाहो दोष धरो, नदियाँ भी वही है, नाव वही, अब तुम ही कहो क्या करना है, अब कैसे पार उतरना है। आई थिंक हमें ये सोचना पड़ेगा कि इस वक्त ये घाव हैं जिनका फैज़ ने जिक्र किया था, वो कैसे भरना है। जब अपनी छाती में हमने इस देश के घाव देखे थे, था खुद पे भी विश्वास बहुत और याद बहुत से नुस्खे थे। यूँ लगता था बस कुछ दिन में सारी बिपता कट जाएगी और सब घाव भर जाएंगे। ऐसा ना हुआ कि रोग अपने कुछ इतने ढेर पुराने थे, वेद इनकी टो को पा ना सके और टोटके सब बेकार गए। अब जो भी चाहो छान करो, अब जितने चाहो दोष धरो, छाती भी वही है, घाव वही, अब तुम ही कहो क्या करना है, ये घाव कैसे भरना है।
Hello, yeah. My question is for Salima Hashmi. Like, so many people have tried to translate Faiz Faz's work, and one among them is Aga Shahid Ali. I personally read him, and he's one of my favorite poets who have, I think, tried to do it up to the mark. For you, you being the daughter and you have known him so well, I mean, so for you, who is the poet or the best translations we could read? Those of them who couldn't read in Urdu. I know there are
Victor Kiernan.
When
Victor Kiernan. That's the best translation because Faiz has collaborated with him.
Okay, so that one is
that's my thing.
I think that translations are a major issue, as we were speaking about this morning. I think my father said the last word on that. क्योंकि एक बहुत ही बुरी translation, I mean really awful translation written by a very famous person arrived on his table, and the gentleman wanted him to write the foreword. So my father, of course, never wanting to annoy anybody, said to my mother, why don't you read it and tell me what it's like? So she said, it's awful. So he wrote him a very nice letter saying, I can't believe that a person who is so busy as you and so important as you has taken time out to translate my poetry. Then he turned around to my husband and said, you know, it's terribly important when you're doing a translation that you should know at least one of the bloody languages.
Thank you. There is one other question for Neha.
Ma'am, my question is for Shabana Azmi. I just wanted to know how different or how similar do you think is Javed Akhtar's writing with that of your father?
How different is Javed?
Or similar? What do you think? Javed Akhtar's writing with that of your father?
Just the writing of people.
Both.
Well, I think many similarities and many dissimilarities. Similarities come from the fact that both of them come from identical backgrounds. Javed's father, Janisar Akhtar, was a member of the Communist Party. He was a member of the Progressive Writers Association. He was from UP. He loved the language. He was a political creature. He was a film lyricist. I mean, there are so many commonalities over there that that it's very easy to say that there are many similarities, particularly because there is a worldview which is shared. There is a worldview which looks at issues of equality, justice, and questions why they are not there and why things are lacking. Having said that, I think the concerns being similar, the expression is completely different. Javed's, I think, is a far more personal expression. As part of the progressive writers, I think it was part of their ilk to not personalize it, but to universalize it. So every pain, every conflict, every issue that they saw, they took away the personal from it and they universalized it because the self was not that important. In Javed's poetry, and that's why I find it very interesting, that Javed is willing to see his own flaws, and so when he asks his questions, he also says, but I'm guilty of the same question that I'm asking. And because he puts the personal into it, I think it becomes immediately relatable. But as a poet, I mean, I'm nobody really to comment on Javed's poetry, but I do know that my father, who I valued very highly, used to say that Javed is most certainly the best poet of his generation.
Hello. We are running close to the end of time, and I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to have Shabana maybe read a poem, and if we can persuade you to sing a Kaifi song.
बहुत दिन से प्रैक्टिस नहीं की। अरशद महमूद की धुन है, टीना साहनी ने इसको गाया है और मेरी बेहद पसंदीदा। क्या हुआ? अभी तो मैं बोलूँगी, मतलब आप मैं अपनी बात तो कंप्लीट कर लूँ। And yes, फैज साहब बस मैं बोल बोल के लब आजाद हैं तेरे, बोल ज़बान अब तक तेरी है, तेरा सुतवा जिस्म है तेरा, बोल के जा अब तक तेरी है, देख के आहन घर की दुकान में तुंद है शोले, सुर्ख है आहन खुलने लगे पुफलों के दहाने, फैला हर एक जंजीर का दामन, बोल ये थोड़ा वक्त बहुत है, जिस्म ज़बान की मौत से पहले, बोल के सच जिंदा है कहना है कह ले. Thank you.
I don't think there can be a better way to end this session than with this one. Thank you all for coming.